Welcome to another episode of From Amateur to Expert Daily. Over the past couple of weeks, I've been sharing ideas from the upcoming book, Virus-Proof Your Business, 50 Ways to Survive the COVID-19 Crisis. We are 2 days away from the global launch of the ebook version. Meanwhile, let's keep the ideas flowing and keep entrepreneurs in business. Today we're talking about creative ways to stretch your existing cash. I've mentioned previously that sacrifice can actually be a galvanizing and gratifying mission when you approach it with the right mindset rather than seeing it as a compromise. Now let's talk about how you can actually reduce your operating costs. First step. Begin by reducing all non-essential maintenance or repairs. If it's dry season in your part of the world, you can postpone repairing leaks or damp. Try to do any handyman work yourself, enlist a friend or a family member, or perhaps do this on a barter basis. You might consider cancelling garden services or tending to the garden yourself. Next thing, negotiate terms. To reduce money going out, you can try to negotiate longer or discounted terms with your suppliers or perhaps your landlord. Consider selling any company assets that you might have to the bank and then leasing them back with monthly payments. That can give you a cash injection into the business, and it could be a way of stretching your cash flow. Next idea, offer gift certificates. This is an excellent way to bring in cash immediately. It generally entails servicing the obligation at a later stage when your buyers, when your tribes, your fans, your followers feel comfortable venturing out again. It's useful to offer both gift certificates and to encourage people to buy them in order to support a range of small businesses around you. Remember, this is not a zero-sum game. We need everyone to prosper. You can also pre-sell. Some industries lend themselves to pre-selling, things like the hospitality industry, which can offer accommodation for later in the year. Same applies, of course, for events. Could you do this, perhaps offering specials to spur sales? Next one, learn to see ghost money. You might recall this from a previous video and from my book Poverty Proof. I detail this phenomenon of what we call ghost money, which it really represents money that you can either gain or lose if you can simply learn how to see it. You can gain ghost money by using point systems, by shopping for sales, by buying in bulk, or by negotiating percentage point decreases in repayments. Even 0.5% difference can make a massive impact over time. Research shows that wealthy people tend to use these ideas and these systems much more so than less affluent people. So it is more likely that a wealthy person will buy in bulk, will buy when there are sales, and will use points. And in that way, they triple their use of ghost money. You can also lose ghost money when unexplained amounts come off your account each month. Prime examples, insurances that you never use, things like roadside assistance or dent protection plans. If you bought one, and here we're using British pounds, for just £15 a month, and you haven't used it for 10 years, it represents nearly £2,000 in ghost money leaving your life. Scour your accounts for these outgoing amounts that you can't identify and cancel them. Strange and unexpected taxes can comprise ghost money too. Whenever you make a large-scale move, something like selling a house, hiring staff, investing, and so forth, you can actually save massive amounts on tax simply by speaking to a tax consultant. Selling a house can be no more than a matter of timing. In one true story in Poverty Proof, a woman who sold her house paid extraordinary amounts of tax, which she could have evaded entirely had she just waited a few months' time, and she would have qualified for zero taxation. A tax consultant could have told her that. So when it comes to ghost money, knowledge is cash flow. Next idea, cull your problem children. The concept of firing a bad customer seems alien to some. But the slow payers and those who demand all sorts of freebies were never good allies even at the best of times. Right now, you probably can't afford them and they are a drain on resources. Saying goodbye to those customers gets rid of additional drain during a crisis and, frankly, a headache in the long term. Next, an idea from my friend and accountant Richard R. Moore. Get your house in order so that you might benefit from tax holidays. All around the world, if government announces tax holidays or other schemes, you will need to have your paperwork in order. That's simply how governments work. So document agreements properly. Make sure that you have the proper company name and that people have signed. Governments very readily reject funding over incorrect company names, small details like that. Also, don't avoid the taxman. Do return submits if you need to and immediately tell them that you're struggling to pay. Ask if you can set up a repayment scheme because tax departments generally entertain the suggestion so long as you keep up to date. If you hide and they have to come looking for you, that's when it gets ugly. Next, sell that old water cooler. Take a look around the office. Is there anything physical gathering dust that you don't need? Any old resources, computers, tools, desks? If you've been meaning to get rid of them, do it now in order to free up some cash flow. This also represents a win-win during tough times for other entrepreneurs who might need these items and can now purchase them inexpensively from you. However, one massive word of warning. Please leave your life insurance intact. I've heard this idea echoed passionately by several financial planners. Do not cancel life insurance. Some costs can be culled with very little risk, but this is absolutely not one of them. In a worst-case scenario, but this is not a recommendation, you could reduce your monthly payments and request a less comprehensive plan, but do not cancel. Next thing you can do, determine whether you might keep the money you've already been paid. Directors of fairs, festivals, conventions, and events that have been cancelled are in some cases doing something innovative. They're rolling over existing deposits until the next year. Now that can take some clever management of the following year's budget, but the principle could tide you over. You might also team up with accommodation providers in the area to offer the same deal to pre-booked clients. That can then make the full package more attractive to clients. So is there a creative way in which you could retain monies collected or a portion of them as a deposit, even if that means servicing the work at a later stage? And here it may be necessary to be flexible. Business has traditionally tended to favor the consumer. Right now, and for a time, it may have to favor the supplier, just for the sake of survival. If cancellations are necessary, try to retain payments if possible, or to offer partial rather than full reimbursement. Bear in mind, of course, it's a delicate balancing act because you have long-term customer goodwill at play. Now, here my friend Tony Cross, who's a sales management thought leader, offers us a 5C model to look at the cash flow problem. Start with clarity. Categorize essential versus non-essential spend. Often we spend money on what we think is essential, but it's not critical spend. Determine the difference. Then get very clear on how much money is still likely to be collected and crystal clear on what revenue streams could be affected. Ask, for example, what 3 scenarios should we build for the next 3 to 6 months? Number 2 of our 5 C's, collaboration. Who can we work with? Our banks, clients, suppliers, and perhaps other organizations. Our 3rd C, communication. What should we tell our staff regarding their salaries and their bonuses? What can we ask our banks? Perhaps loans could be extended to minimize our monthly payments, and perhaps we need a new loan or credit arranged. What can we ask our clients? Perhaps they can manage an earlier payment in lieu of work, or another suggestion, they might actually surprise you. What could you ask your suppliers and creditors? Are they willing to delay payments? What could you ask anyone else, or who can help? The 4th C, cadence. When should we do this? Can we do it now? Can we get as many things done as possible as soon as possible? How often do we monitor progress? In all likelihood, it will need to be weekly. Anything more tends to be panic, anything less, negligence. And the 5th C, command. Who will lead this work? Who will make sure that we do everything possible to give ourselves as much time as possible? As you work through that 5 C's process, always bear in mind that any delay in payment from you likely disadvantages someone else. So there are 2 sides to the discussion with pluses and minuses. And the final idea is, could you barter, trade, or negotiate for what you desperately need? What do you desperately need? Is there another business owner with whom you could trade effort, skills, access to infrastructure, perhaps rather than cash, for the things that matter most to you, even if that's only a temporary arrangement? So you might start by determining what you have to offer that a trade partner might need or benefit from. Approach them in a direct but civil way. Bear in mind they can always say no. They might say yes. As ever, it's worth asking the question. And a final little PS thought on this topic is to track your home expenses for tax purposes. Now, every nation around the world has different rules on this one, but in many cases, if you are working at home, you can actually claim on many of the office items that you are using. Some places, like the UK, insist that you have a dedicated office, so seems bizarre, but if you're working from the lounge, what you're doing is not tax deductible. But wherever you are around the world, it's worth assuming that you might be able to enjoy some tax deductibility based on working at home. Make sure that you keep your slips, that you keep track of all of your costs. In our next video, we'll discuss how you can offer your product or service in a cheap and charming, quick and quirky way. In other words, we'll look at how to reduce the cost of doing business while still coming across as innovative, plucky, and charming. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. If the ideas are helping, please make sure that you share them broadly. In the interim, the book Virus Proof Your Small Business is now available for pre-order via Amazon.com.